3, 2, and 1. Mr. Speaker, I know we're in debate land, but it's probably the case that curses, hexes, jinxes, all of those things probably don't exist. But what does exist is the Hijra's culture, identity, and experience. That is what's most important. And when we put them on this pedestal that Op wants so much, we inherently misunderstand their very way of living and box them into one type of lens, which is as we see from the Infoslide, is such a shame. Because being a eunuch, being intersex, and being transgender are all different things with different types of experiences. What our side wants to do is break all of these myths and misunderstood assumptions to have them live in a world where they don't have to live as a mythical figure and be seen by the very people that they actually are. If they want them to go back into current society, then we also give them the choice. 2 strategic observations in top half to why our extension works. Number 1, our opening had their case on cultural appropriation and the negative perceptions it may have on Western media. We think that just takes second precedence to what the people of India think, and more importantly, what those types of people think about them, and giving them agency. Our extension is going to be more comparative on side opposition and prove why our side will be better for the Hijra people. Sorry, I forgot how to say it. Secondly, I don't understand opening opposition. The Hijra people don't have control over the perception that they have. Just because India reveres fucking gods doesn't fucking mean that they'll automatically have all the power in the world. And I think DLO forgot what they're defending, status quo, right? If they were going to get all of that economic enfranchisement that DLO actually talks about, that would have already happened 30 fucking years ago. We'll prove that later, but what we tell you is that this culture lends itself to boxing these Hijra people into one specific type of thing that's bad for a bunch of fucking reasons. Before that, a few rebuttals. Firstly, a lot of what LO tells us is largely contradictory. They claim that they need social mobility, representation, and resources because the state has not recognized their identity. So, their solution is to keep them shrouded and vague as a people. There was no response to my partner's POI. The harm here is that you dilute their identity and culture in the otherwise thousands of gods that India culture already has, as OO characterized. This allows the government and people to have the chance to further misrep them and not know who they truly are. Secondly, LO has this strange assertion about them starting their own religion. First, this is to an extent already happened and is symmetric. Second, we can't assume that they want to be contacted and incorporated into current society. They likely want to remain at the margins in the peace and tranquility where they can practice their beliefs. Even if they want some sort of representation, then that only happens when you give them a chance to allow them to tell their story and allow them the world to listen, okay? Thirdly, the mythicizing does not come from them, it comes from the outside world. They have no say in this because they are uncontacted and at the margins of the society at best. They are inside and unable to look out while the world is outside and judging as we look in. They don't have any agency on that. Fourthly, on the idea of hexes and blessings. Regardless of this being a placebo or form of copium, it's super harmful if they're allowed to share these types of ideologies without any clear dissent or clarity, and conversely bad for people to believe in this shit. People are unable to get access to things like Western medicine and proper treatment, or at least they'll look down upon it because it's not what their beliefs say. Lastly, DLO says in response to my partner's POI, we don't want them to give them an identity, but we want to give them a platform to stand on. Panel, that's the same shit. If what DLO says is true, then they would have already been politically and economically enfranchised since status quo is this mythicization. Clearly something isn't working and it's probably them continuing to be misrepresented because they aren't clearly defined. I have 2 extensions. Firstly, which side caters best to the identity of the Hijra people? Our side says that this culture of mysticizing leads to a misunderstanding of their religion, their lifestyle, and their culture by the very Indian people who are near them and who revere them. This is important insofar as it answers one of the largest unanswered questions in the round. What are the genuine negative harms of mythicizing? Because what happens in status quo? First, the Hijras are forced into this mold that they are above the confines of normalcy. This leads them into the position of being treated as inhumane, or us having to look up at them and them having to look down at us. Why is this bad? This is bad as it forces this norm that the Hijras are not human. We actually think that the proliferation of their stories and the glorification they have are not a good thing for them, insofar as they never really even wanted that. We didn't even get their opinion. Secondly, the story of the Hijras don't have their stories told. Like what Op says, again, is inherently false. The people who talk about the Hijras are the people who have this mysticized view. How the fuck do they have the power to coalesce and have equal footing when they are in the literal fringes of society? It's in fact precisely because of this mysticizing, which they don't have control over, that engulfs them in a special position where they are gods. OO's first argument cannot stand in this round. Why then does opposing this solve this? But before that, I heard the POI go. Yeah, go. Sorry, which part did you cut out? Which part of my speech? Okay, cool. Sure. Sure. Okay, I'll just like put 2 minutes in my clock. Next, 3, 2, 1. So again, we believe that the that opening opposition, like first argument, just doesn't stand. Why? Now, first reason, the Hijras are forced into this mold that they are above the confines of normalcy. This leads them into the position of being treated as inhumane, or us having to look up at them and them having to look down on us. Why is that bad? This is bad as this form, like norm, that the Hijras, this forces the norm that the Hijras are not actually human. We think that the proliferation of their stories and the glorification that LO said are just going to be more harmful for them, insofar as they never even wanted them to begin with, and we don't even know what it is they actually want. Secondly, the story of the Hijras doesn't have their story told. Like what Op says just is inherently false. The people who actually do tell these stories are the people who have, like, are the people who actually, like, are in the outside looking in. Why then does opposing these, like, this narrative or this mythicizing solve that? Number one, you get rid of the taboo, which enables you to talk to them as real people. Note, OO cannot have their cake and eat it too. When you glorify and mythicize these people, you're going to have the preconceived perception that they are something to be praised. What our side does is get rid of that notion in the first place. Secondly, you enable them to go back into this to society to the extent that they want, right? The Hijra people might want to go back into society, they might not want. What we at least give them is the voice to do that, to normalize them to not go back to being at the fringes of society and actually understand what they want. What are the impacts of this? Firstly, both sides don't know what they want, but CG tells you that only through our make can we actually figure that out in the first place. Secondly, representation is actually not enough, as what opening half may have asserted. You give them the voice in order to give out their wants. OO presumes their wants. We actually talk to them to tell them about their wants. Really quickly, which side caters best to their humanity? CG says that mysticizing leads to putting all of those unique identities into one monolithic identity. And this is bad because, as I said in the beginning of my speech, eunuchs, intersex, and transgender people are all different types of people. When you get rid of this culture of mysticism, you actually give them an avenue to flesh out their stories and flesh out the types of identities that we want. We want them to be real people, and that's the mechanism that we want to champion. For all of those reasons, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.